Hello everyone, welcome. Welcome to the San Antonio, Texas Climate Reality Project meeting. My name is Darshana Gupte and I'm chapter chair of this for the chapter in San Antonio. Today we have very distinguished guest. His name is Sean Armstrong. He's from Redwood Energy, California. He has extensive experience in making homes, how to make our homes electric, how to electrify our homes. And he's doing this work for many years. He has also won so many awards, and to name the few, in 2015 he won Innovation Award from Department of Energy. In 2016, Gold Nugget Award. 2017, United Nations World Habitat Award. 2022, Clean Energy Hall of Fame of California Energy Commission. So we are really truly fortunate to have him today to educate us on this very critical subject, how to electrify our homes. But before he starts his presentation, we have our own Bob Hendricks. He's chapter chair of CCL in Austin. He will give us a brief overview of what is IRA, how does it work, what are the benefits, and what is the latest after 1 year of it's being implemented. So with that, thank you, Bob, and floor is yours. So go ahead. Thank you.
We did it. The biggest step forward in the fight against climate change done by anyone anywhere. And it was not easy. The Sierra Club sent nearly 200,000 emails and phone calls to Capitol Hill. The Citizens Climate Lobby sent over 200,000. And the other groups, in addition, sent. And as you probably remember, we just barely got it through after a year of up and down with more downs than ups. This includes at least $469 billion in IRA to fight the climate crisis, and the projections are that this would cut climate pollution 40% from 2005 levels by 2030. Come on. Now, how's it come? It has dozens of programs, over 100. What it basically does, though, it wants to make all electricity clean electricity, solar, wind, others. It wants to switch our energy use to electricity. So instead of using gasoline and natural gas, use electricity. And it will help to help us use less energy, especially through higher efficiency buildings. Now that's important because in Texas, some days they need to run every source of electricity, but most days they only turn on the number they need. Solar and wind are the first things turned on. So any energy we save through higher efficiency will actually go towards reducing electricity from coal and natural gas. Now, we have been very slowly reducing our greenhouse gases in the United States. I say slowly, and that is, it is way too slowly. It is projected to continue at that rate, which leaves us way below the Paris target of 50% by 2030, which some scientists say even that is not enough. If you factor in the Inflation Reduction Act, you will see the range of predictions goes from just barely above 30% to all the way of 50%. At its worst, it just does slightly better than business as usual. At its best, it reaches that Paris target, which is a significant start on our reductions. Now, one of the keys for the for the difference is we have to be using these rebates and tax credits in order for them to actually cut greenhouse gases. And there is an adoption rate, and it can be slow. We have to get the early adopters, which is really where we are now, to buying more and more so that can start convincing the early majority to do more. And that can be a slow process, or we can do it really fast. One of the reasons this is important is you saw those projections and the difference between 30% and 50%. Well, this graph shows the Inflation Reduction Act's potential effect on how many new vehicles are electric. And at its low area, only 19% would be electric vehicles. At its highest level, it would be 57%. That is a huge difference, and it would clearly make a lot of difference in how much we are cutting that huge transportation section. So by purchasing products early, you not only save money, but you also accelerate the curve that will help us stop our carbon pollution and give a chance for us to not go into very catastrophic results. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Bob. That's excellent. So we know. So I have a question, Bob. So EV, you said about EV, but do we have enough infrastructure for, if everybody buys EV, do we have a infrastructure for EV and then microgrid can take that thing?
No, we do not today, but the Inflation Reduction Act has lots of money to develop infrastructure, and that will be expected. The state of Texas has already developed a plan to use the bipartisan infrastructure money to put a fast charger about every 50 miles of every interstate in Texas. And there's money going to cities also to build that infrastructure. So yes, we've got to be building infrastructure fast, and we need to be building electric vehicles fast if we want to hit that 50%.
Thank you. Anyone has any question for Bob? If not, let's go with Sean. So let me introduce Sean. Sean is a very distinguished guest that we have. He's from Redwood Energy, and he has won many awards since 2015. To name a few: Innovation Award for Department of Energy in 2015 and now 2020, Gold Nugget Award in 2016, Sustainability Award for Social so-called Building Industry in 2017, United Nations Award for Habitat Award in 2017, Clean Energy Hall of Fame Award in California Energy Commission. So he's been doing this many years. And Bob Sean, you can tell more about yourself and your work and when you started, and then you can present your presentation.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, y'all, for spending some Saturday time. I appreciate your seriousness on the topic. So I'm going to present on electrifying your house with Inflation Reduction Act funds. I'm going to I like to do story time kind of, so hang out with me, and I'm going to tell some stories that will be helpful. And I'm more than excited to take questions all the way along. Interrupt me. It's what I like to do. So on this, the first page here on the left-hand side, you can see a pocket guide to all electric retrofits of single-family homes, which is a free book that is very practical. And I get told all the time that it's actually readable and pleasant. And like a university professor yesterday was teaching her class for her, and she was saying that before she started teaching a class, she read that book so she would know how to teach the topic of electrification. So I consider it authoritative and very clear. Then also on our website, there's the power efficiency calculator, and this is if you get in a pinch. You're trying to figure out how to electrify your house or your apartment complex without having to get a new service from the utility. That's a new thicker electrical wire. So we have a whole calculator, tons of guidance, videos you can watch. Like, you don't ever need to do a service upgrade. I'm going to talk a little bit about that here, but I have a lot of things to sort of chat about. Briefly, I got trained at this demonstration home. Bob, congratulations on your demonstration home. I think these are the most important things, that we all actually see and touch and get to meet someone. So I lived in this house on campus. I'll tell a story later about it. This is a cute little, one of my early zero net energy apartment complexes. So I got trained in college. I thought I'd change the world as an environmental activist by being a high school science teacher. Got impatient and felt like, we do not have time for this. I can't teach the next generation. I am that generation. I got to get to work. So I decided, instead of being a high school science teacher, I would go do affordable housing. And I figured out how to do all electric, 100% solar powered housing for low-income households that was more profitable to do it that way, like over a 15-year period with the payback of solar. If I can make it all electric, it was more profitable. That was really the key to our success. And we've worked on about 400 apartment complexes since then. So I have just tons of experience at this point. I've been playing how to do all electric since 1995 was when I started learning how to do it at this house. So started consultancy in 2011. One of my coolest projects is this. It's in Washington, D.C. next to the Beltway. And it's being built right now. It'll have a 9-story tall solar wall, and it's all electric and passive house, and it's for low-income seniors. And this helped finance the project, making it all electric and solar powered. So I thought we'd start with, what's a heat pump? And I'm just looking over in the chat, and I see Todd. You said you have a friend. Oh, Tom. Hey, Tom, you're here. It's so nice to see you. You guys are in such luck. So if you have any questions, put them into the chat, because Tom is more knowledgeable than I am. Like, he is deeper in every single little detail, and I asked Tom for advice. So you have everything you need. There isn't anyone else you need. Just like, ask your question in the chat. We got you solid. Okay, so this is a cutaway of a modern heat pump. I'm just gonna like demystify this for a moment. What is a heat pump? It's a fan. It's mostly a fan. And like, that's what takes up space in there. And then around the fan is blowing air against these thin little fins of metal. You can barely see it. They're just little tiny fins. It's a surface area to collect or discharge heat. It's like that metal is for either collecting heat or getting rid of heat. Getting rid of the heat is in air conditioning mode. Collecting heat is in heating your house mode. And to the right of it, this is the condenser that functions as a pump for pumping the refrigerant around. And there's some computer controls up here, because like, what temperature is it outside? What temperature did you ask for it inside? Can I run this in a variable, sophisticated way like modern heat pumps? And I'll talk about that in a sec. So this is it. If it's on a water heater, a heat pump water heater, it's the same thing. It's a fan with little pieces of metal, thin fins of metal to collect heat. If it's for space heating or cooling your house, if it's for a washing machine, if it's in your electric car, like most electric cars now are using heat pumps to heat in the wintertime instead of using electric resistance, which is like what a toaster is or a hairdryer is. Okay, I think that it's helpful for people to have story time. So in modern day Iran, Persia, around 500 BC, so 2,000 plus years ago, this is how people made ice, which is the real driver behind heat pump development. We would like to have ice, please. And what you're seeing here is a pool that is engineered, smart people just like Tom Cabot, a mechanical engineer, and they would fill it with just enough water for the winter night clear sky in the desert to freeze the water. And then they had super insulated, like passive house, super insulated buildings right next to it that they would take the sheets of ice off in the morning, and they'd go put them into the ice house, and they'd be able to make ice all winter and keep it cold for the summer with really well insulated homes. This is old style, how you make ice. This is a more natural, non-engineered version. All over the United States, all over the world, people would just collect ice in the wintertime, and put it in insulated buildings, usually insulated with straw, or if they're like close to Portugal, insulated with cork. But then things got better. There was a typesetter in Australia, and he was using ether, which evaporates right as soon as it touches your skin. It evaporates and it makes your skin really cold. And he noticed this when he was cleaning off keys on like type keys for a printing press, that he's just freezing his hands every time he got this liquid on him, and as it boiled off and evaporated. And he's like, if I could capture that, I could use this. I could figure out a way to make things freezing cold. And when the vapor evaporated, and I would just capture that vapor and I'd turn it back into a liquid. And I'd just recycle this process of boiling this liquid of ether. And he did it. He messed around with it. He's a mechanic, and he figured out how to make this vapor compression cycle where you squish the vapor back into a liquid. Well, that makes ice. This is the beginning of ice making in Australia. There were, by the way, many different people involved in the first heat pump. I mean, many different machinists there, but I mean, inventors all over the world at the same time who are using the same equipment and getting interesting, similar results. No one really gets to claim credit. I mean, no one person, even though he has a patent for patent ice making machine. So then the beer folks are the ones who really financially developed heat pumps all over the world, beer. And they would get insulated train cars, and they'd get ice, and then they'd ship beer out into the boonies. This is how Brooklyn, New York became the center of heat pump manufacturing in North America, because they had the biggest breweries. In 1900, I'm just sort of walking you through a quick electrification history, because it's helpful, and it introduces some fundamental concepts. So in 1900, this is a tipping point in our history. In 1900, the fastest car in the world is an electric car, les jamais content, which means never satisfied. It's the first car, it's the fastest car to get to 60 miles per hour. And you can go out on YouTube and you can find modern day recreations of les jamais content, because people like love the car and they've made it again. But it looks like this on the right-hand side, this little torpedo. On the left-hand side, you can also see the long distance winner. The furthest you could go in the United States was with an electric car in 1900. And in fact, this vehicle on the left, the Electrobat, became the foundation of the first vehicle cab business in the United States. It was an electric cab business, and they would use a gigantic ice rink to have cabs come in and take the battery physically out and put a new battery in, which you'll see in Taiwan, Malaysia, all over Southeast Asia with scooters. People can take the scooter battery out and put the new scooter battery in faster than charging it. So like if you're not in the United States and you're other parts of the world, you see this. So same time, you're seeing much bigger heat pumps getting built. This on the left-hand side is an Anheuser-Busch beer ice making machine. And the right-hand side, you can see during World War I, women were allowed to work finally, and were there delivering ice because the men were off doing the soldiery stuff, getting killed. Now, this is the first real parallel to the modern moment. The Inflation Reduction Act, while amazing, I don't know if it actually can hold up a candle to what the Rural Electrification Administration did. Bob, you and I can debate this. It'll be fun. So in 1935, 90% of people who lived in the country, and I mean most of Texas, had no electricity. And 90% of people who lived in the city, Houston, Dallas, they had electricity. And there's a humongous difference between rural and urban. So the Rural Electrification Administration, during the Great Depression, part of the alphabet soup of agencies that hired people out of poverty, they went around and they electrified by giving subsidized loans to community groups who would then put up their own power poles, and then they would sell electric appliances into the neighborhood, essentially. And this is how 60% of America got electricity. To this very day, that 60% is all these rural electric co-ops. So cool posters, people are delighted, they get pumps, they get electricity for lighting, they can cook food now. It's great stuff. Parallel to today, Switzerland, both in the build up to World War II and during World War II, did not use oil, or tried not to have any involvement in the oil world. You saw what happened when Russia invaded Ukraine. Natural gas was cut off to Western Europe, and many German companies went bankrupt in the last 2 years, like 100-year-old plus companies that had depended upon natural gas, making glass, making pharmaceuticals bankrupt. So Switzerland developed water source heat pumps, and they would literally pull heat out of moats around castles that have been turned into city hall and such. And these is what they look like. And they would make big swimming pools, and they made radiant heating, like you heat water and then water goes into radiators. So they made these massive machines, and that's one of the ways they stayed out of the war. War's over, 1950s, everyone gets a house in the United States, right? GI Bill. And this is what a heat pump now looks like for a whole house, heating and cooling. But it doesn't have a computer in it, obviously. And it's the computer that allows them to run in more than one speed. This is a single speed engine here. It can only go on or off. The lack of multiple speeds, just like if you have many speeds on a bicycle, you can go up a steep hill, well, more or less maintaining the same effort, you just kind of go slower at it. The same thing, what a computer does to a heat pump, I'll show you in a minute, is it allows it to go many speeds, and therefore it can handle polar cold vortex weather as well as super hot weather once it has a computer in it. But these ones at the time, they're simple. Just turn it on or off. Then, like you're starting to see now, the utilities caught wind. Like they'd seen the federal government fund electrification around the country for almost 20 years. And so 1,900 utilities got together and funded the #1 television show in our country on Sunday night. And they hired Ronald Reagan, who becomes important in American history in many ways. He started the #1 show, the General Electric Theater, and they would have advertisements, live better electrically, through the intermissions. They did it like theater, and everyone in Hollywood showed up. And it was really to advertise clean power. They were trying to get a movement around nuclear power plants, General Electric and Westinghouse, the two big companies. That's what it was really all about, is expanding their ability to sell. Today, just like a couple weeks ago, 10 different manufacturers of heat pumps who also manufacture gas furnaces came up and said, we'd like you to ban our gas furnaces, please. We're ready to be done. Please, we'd like to compete on even footing with everyone else. Ban everyone's gas furnaces, but ban ours too, as a business move. This is kind of an amazing moment because it's never happened before. Manufacturers have never in our country said, please ban our products. It's literally never happened. But here we are. So this moment we're in right now, where private business is starting to step in and say, we want in. We think this is the future. Oops, there we go. So things are going kind of cool for electrification until the OPEC oil embargo, something that right now we have to look at because we have, once again, significant conflict in the Middle East. Things don't change, but this caused a fourfold increase in electricity pricing, fourfold increase in gas. Pumps were closed, lines around the block, and it traumatized the nation. So much so that there was like, we have to do something. These heat pumps, they were not yet part of the solution. I'm just showing you a picture, like they were called the spam can and the round one. This was the solution that people came to in the 70s, which was to insulate your house, put a greenhouse on the side to passively heat, put solar up on the roof if you can, put in a wind turbine, insulated curtains, composting toilets, pedal power, bicycle power things. All that stuff is what I was being taught in the 90s. This is the last demonstration house. Carter, the president at the time in the late 70s, he started an Office of Appropriate Technology. But when Reagan came in 1981, he canceled all like 500 demonstration houses in the country. And this is the only one that was left because it was student funded on Humboldt State University's campus in Northern California, where I went. So Reagan is responding to both the OPEC oil embargo and the 1979 Iran hostage crisis. Got a hostage crisis right now. So he responds to that and he says, we're going to develop oil and nuclear domestically. And this begins a deregulation of American oil that in 2009, we became oil independent in the United States, all the way from this effort from the 1970s. And Bush, he had been a CIA director, but he was also a multimillionaire oil baron in Texas. And so he was brought in to figure out how to do oil. And Reagan went after nuclear. Nuclear, unfortunately, has continued to not be cost effective. It's the most expensive electricity in the world. So, 1985, an immigrant grandson of Theodore Stiebel leaves Germany, goes to Vermont, becomes a hippie, and says, I don't want to leave. And he brings manufacturing of one of the world's largest water heating manufacturers to the United States and invents this first heat pump water heater in 1985, which is still made today, and it's a beautiful product. Beautiful product. Japan, in 2001, does something new. They put a new refrigerant in, which can make very, very hot water, like 190-degree hot water with a heat pump, which people hadn't been doing before. It was like 130. So they add a computer and they use CO2 as the refrigerant. And they make these for showering and then a gigantic bathtub. So if any of you have a big bathtub in your house, this is a product for you. The Sandco 2, which is kind of blurry, you can't see it, but Sandco 2, they make, it looks, this is it. This is what it looks like. And this is the heat pump you have for if you have like those gigantic eggshell bathtubs. Otherwise, you just use something like this. It's just a 40 to 80 gallon tank. But if you have something huge, then you need an 80 gallon tank plus a very big fan and a very big, like this produces 4 times as much heat as this does. This has a smaller fan, smaller surface area, larger fan, larger surface area. These are heat pumps that you could get. Mitsubishi is one of the very premier brands in the United States, really the most expensive brand of all the brands, because they have a reputation for really high quality. And they were some of the first people to put computers into the heat pumps. You know, but you remember like 20 years ago when people were starting to get computers in their homes and computers were getting small and we had cell phones and such. That's at the moment that we get variable control heat pumps. So they can work at -30 Fahrenheit and 130 Fahrenheit. They're not single speed anymore. Now they have every single gear. And that's what the computer did. So now, 2009 and since, General Electric, Rheem, A.O. Smith, Stiebel Eltron, Aerotherm, Bradford White, American, like tons of these heat pump water heaters out on the market now. I want to point out that some of them are 120 volt that you can plug into any outlet in your house. And some of them are 240 volt and you need to do special wiring because that's like the electricity that goes to an electric stove or to an electric dryer, 240 volt. And I recommend people go get the 120 volt ones because it's just easier and cheaper to just plug it in any old spot. This is an example. It looks like this because this black thing attached to it, it mixes the water from 140 Fahrenheit that it's being stored at down to 120 that you're supposed to deliver it at. And that extra 20 degrees of temperature allows it to eliminate an electric resistance toaster backup element. It uses, instead of 4,500 watts, it uses 500 watts. So anyway, these 120 volt tanks, you see the 120 volt wire over the side. Rheem and A.O. Smith make them. And A.O. Smith makes a very quiet one, and Rheem makes a less expensive, noisier one. So those are kind of your 2 choices for 120 volt, Rheem and A.O. Smith. And now today, this is what it looks like across our country in all electric construction. Here's Texas at 37% all electric construction. I'm standing in California, which is at 8%. So that's 4 times worse, 4.5 times worse. California has its own energy code and for a long time has been anti-electrification because of high electricity prices in California, not elsewhere. This divide where you can see that it's really the south of the United States, except for California. It's the south of the United States, it's more all electric. And that's because they've been installing heat pumps since the 1950s because they didn't really need a computer to make it work well in the wintertime because it was warm. Florida is 77% all electric, 72% all electric in Hawaii. So like places that people go to vacation are all electric mostly. Now, I should not give you a presentation without talking about solar, both because the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits we're going to show in just a moment here. We're kind of up to the present day. Rooftop solar and utility solar are both incentivized by the Inflation Reduction Act. What this graph has in orange is the utility solar. In yellow, that's rooftop solar, you and me. In red is the combined. You can kind of ignore all this other bar graphs and such. Just focus on the orange, which is the utility, and the yellow, which is rooftop. And you'll see that in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, people are installing more solar than utilities are nationwide. It's ethical people like you and me. We're doing solar. I was installing solar on people's roofs as a business in 2001. And I knew at the time, PG&E, our local utility, did nothing. And I was on people's roofs. And these are a multi-billion-dollar company, did nothing for solar. So it's only in like 2013, which is when solar prices start to drop, because they've dropped by almost 90% since 2010 to today. So when prices started to drop, utilities started to install solar. And to this day, you can see some years the utilities do more, and some years rooftop, normal people, we do more. But mostly it's utilities. But look, right now, rooftop is catching up again. So what rooftop solar does is it makes electricity cheap. It makes it so that if you electrify your home, no matter where you are in the country, you're always going to have cheaper energy. That's true in about 80% of the United States. If you electrify now, it's cheaper. But if you add solar, it's true in 100% of states. So, and I see Tom is helpfully putting in chat notes, just if anyone's interested. And here, this is the good news. We're all enthusiastic environmentalists. Check this out. This just came out yesterday. Half of the world's largest economies are past their peak use of fossil fuel in electricity generation. So America is down to 14.4. We reduced our fossil fuel production by 15% roughly in the last 15 years. And so that's us. Here's 14.4%. Just pick your favorite country. And what this dotted line is showing you is when the peak happened. And, so 10 years, 11 years ago, Zimbabwe was 20 years ago. They're down from their peaks. Macedonia. So what we're seeing is that over the last 10 to 15 years, more renewable energy is coming in. We are past the tipping point in most of the world in our use of fossil fuels. So we just need to go faster. And that's what the Inflation Reduction Act is for. This gets to the meat of our talk. I just gave you a little history talk. I introduced you to some of the products. I explained a little bit about heat pumps so that you understand a little. So here we have, sorry, my 9-year-old just walked in. What's up?
Look at what.
Oh.
You get better.
Oh. That's so sweet. She loves you. Okay, so this is a tax credit that is the most available to you. All of you, for electrifying your home, just pay attention to this. There really isn't anything else. This is the one. So this is a tax credit. It comes off your taxes. If you don't have taxes, you can't use the tax credit. There is rebates for people who don't pay taxes that I'll show you in a moment. I'm assuming most of you, not all of you, pay taxes, just for a moment, if that's the case. So assuming that's the case, that means 30% provides a 30% tax credit for residential efficiency and electrification upgrades up to $3,200 a year. So if you spend $10,000 in year one, you can get $3,200 back, because that's roughly 30%. Or if you spent $9,500 or $9,600, whatever, it's about that, $3,200 a year. So you have to spend about 10 grand. 10 grand is everything you'll spend for your water heater and your stove and a brand new dryer. You probably don't quite get to 10 grand for those three things. Hopefully not. Honestly, you could do it for 7 grand or 6 grand for those things. So 10 grand is really more for your HVAC system, your heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, heating and cooling system. That costs $10,000 or more almost all the time. So this is a tax credit just to focus like, oh, I'm going to use this for my HVAC system. Then the next year, you can do it again. And it'll give you money for your water heater. Now, they're even a little bit trickier, though, because they say the annual credit for heat pumps, this is for space heating, and heat pump water heaters, water heating, is at $2 grand. So you have to say 30%. So I could spend $6,000, and then 30% of that would be $2,000 for my heat pump space heating system. because basically what they're trying to do is push you to do multiple things at once, and if so, incentivize that. But I don't think it's a winning deal. If you have $20,000, go for it. But if you don't, then you have to just acknowledge that you're not going to get more than $2,000 for your space heating system or $2,000 for your water heating system. But the water heater only costs about $2,000 to buy, and to install it should be about $4,000 to $5,000. So once again, they're like, it's a little bit hard to game this, how to get the most money. You have to study this. Then the other ones, the annual credit for other upgrades are capped at $1,200. So $600 for your electrical panel, if you have a new electrical panel installed. This is nice. $1,200 they'll give you credit for weatherization. Weatherization is like new windows, caulking around the doors and the windows, caulking or foam sills around the, or even insulating can be part of weatherization, more insulation up in the attic. $150 for your energy audit, $600. These are credits. $600 for energy properties. So they're thinking $1,200 will credit towards all these things. $2,000 is what will credit towards heat pump spacing and water heating. So that's $3,200 total. So they're saying if you spend about $10,000 and it includes a heat pump, water heater, or a heat pump space heating system, we'll give you $2,000 for that, and we'll give you another $1,200 for other things. That's kind of like the best case scenario. They have to meet a very high energy efficiency. So this is basically Energy Star, but the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, CEE, tier is not the same as Energy Star. So you just have to go to that database and note that that's where you need to find your product. If you want to get that tax credit, it has to be in the highest tier. And note that the annual credit limit resets every year. So you can get $3,200 in year 2. I'm not clear if it's a rollover. If you spent $20,000, could you get $3,200 and then hold the tax credit for the next year and get $3,200? I don't know. I've not seen a piece of tax advice on this, and I apologize if anyone else does know on the rollover question. But okay, we'll have to move on. Then the clean energy credit. This is for solar. All y'all can get this. It's a 30% tax credit off your solar array. Interestingly, they said, you know what? We know that heat pumps are a kind of renewable energy collector, and we know that ground source heat pumps are the most expensive. So we'll call a ground source heat pump a kind of clean energy. Even though an air source heat pump or a water source heat pump, they're also heat pumps. They do the same thing. They're just either using heat from the air or heat from the water. And this is using heat from the ground, but it's still boiling a refrigerant and using a vapor compression cycle. It's the same stuff. So if you get a ground source heat pump, unlike any other thing, a ground source heat pump is 30% off. Okay. I mean, and a ground source heat pump usually installs for $20,000 to $30,000. Yeah, anyway, there's your tax credit for your ground source heat pump. I want to focus on the solar one because a solar tax credit is great. 30% off is a really good deal. Then the next question is, what should your solar cost? The way that most people use units of solar is they call it kilowatts DC. The kilowatt is a measurement of the instantaneous power that the panel can produce during like noon, sunny day. So that's the most it can do, is that amount of power in a moment. Most houses need somewhere between 4 to 6 kilowatts to offset all of their use if they're all electric. 4 to 6 kilowatts. Kilowatt costs to install somewhere between $2,500 and $4,000, depending upon who does it. So 4 to 6 kilowatts, roughly what you need for an all-electric home. And then about $3,000 to $3,500 on average in that range is what you're going to pay for your PV array, and you can get 30% off of that. All right, we can do that again. We can do those questions again, but just like, so if it was like four kilowatts times $3,000, that's $12,000. That's kind of on the low side. 30% off of that is $4,000 off. So you'd pay $8,000 out of $12,000, and that would get your relatively energy efficient home completely offset in its annual energy use. That's how that 30% tax credit would work. Some people put not a $12,000 solar array up, but they put a $25,000 solar array up, and it might be a very similar size, and they just went with the wrong contractor. Always get 3 bids. Always get 3 bids. Just pay yourself money in your imagination. I'm paying myself $100 an hour to go out and get my second bid, because that's how much money you might save. And your third bid. Pay yourself. The last tax credit, the last chunk of money that's available is a tax credit also, and it is for EVs. So I just did like the electrification one, the solar one, which also included ground source heat pumps, and now EVs. So today, EVs are 8% of global sales. That is up from 6% last year, which is a 25% growth. And what you can see here on the bottom, this is the total amount of EVs sold in the United States. Now, on the left-hand side, starting in December of 2010, you can see diddly squat. And then December 2012, it starts to go up very slowly. It's kind of a straight line though. You notice it's not going anywhere fast. But then like 2016, it's just starting to go up a little bit faster. 2018, now we're seeing some like interesting faster growth, but then 2020, everyone acknowledges 2020 is a different year. EV sales go through the roof globally, and they start growing from like 2%, 3%, 6%, 8%. We're going through what's called exponential growth globally on EV sales, which means every time we've had exponential growth of anything, cell phones, home refrigerators, having a personal car, all these things in the United States, just think of any technology, having a color TV, all these things, they take 10 to 15 years before somewhere between 90 to 95% of people have them. Once you enter exponential growth, and we've done this dozens of times with adoptions of new technologies in our country, and I've studied all lines in 10 to 15 years. So I think by 2035, most of the planet is going to have purchased an electric vehicle, according to every other trend historically for the last 120 years of rolling out new technologies all the time. We all get new fun stuff. And I want you to be optimistic that way. Like, oh, hey, things are changing faster. You know, it's hard to know when you're in the middle of it, but we aren't in the middle of exponential growth. Now, I would like you to be inspired. This is my favorite house. It's 3 stories tall. It goes 100 miles a day. It uses no fossil fuels and crosses the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific. And it has its own helicopter. It even has its own submarine. Love this house. So I don't expect each of you to have one of these, but we are going to talk about the things that are in a house like this. So you can see they've got a heat pump, by the way, for the swimming pool. It's in the back, like a nice big hot tub. This has an outdoor movie theater. It's got this canopy solar array. It's got one floor that's just the kitchen for like all induction kitchen and such. Anyway, so we're going to talk about luxurious, all electric, and extremely efficient stuff. So here, this is a zero net energy housing complex. It's actually the first in our nation to have succeeded in being all electric and 100% solar powered subdivision, not just like one person's house, but all of the houses, low income senior housing in Fort Bragg, California. So this is one of our projects. This is one of the reasons why I got all those awards at the beginning, is we're doing all the first significant developments in our country of all electric 100% solar powered housing. On the left-hand side, this is called a ductless mini split. Ductless because this is a box that sits on the wall and doesn't blow air through a duct. It doesn't deliver air through registers in your house. It just sits on the wall. These are pretty common in the whole world, and they're mostly used as air conditioners but they can just be reversible air conditioners, and that's a heat pump. So these houses all have 2 of these fan coils that sit on the wall. This is a heat pump water heater. This thing on the top is the thing that chills air and heats the water underneath. So you stand in front of it, cold air blows, but hot water is being produced. This is a 5-burner electric resistance stove, not induction, just glass top. And all of this installed was $11,000. This is a house that might be more normal. Like these are all like 600, 700 square foot homes. Some of you might live in a house like this. This is just one of the houses that we studied, and I thought, oh, I'll grab it. It's kind of a good example. Oh, and there's so many things in the chat. I assume, Tom, that you're taking care of them, but just in case.
Yes, most of it's just me.
You're a hero. You asked what appliance would you start with first? I would start with your stove, the most polluting thing. It's equivalent to having someone smoke cigarettes in the kitchen and just blow it into the living rooms. It's equivalent to blowing smoke into your child's face or a pet's face. It causes equivalent amount of asthma, cancer, like lung disease cancer, just general body ailments that show up in like tripled amount of medication if you're on a cardiopulmonary medication of any sort. Anything that relates to your heart or your lungs, which are kind of one organ in some ways. They have special connections, just the 2 of them, to do the work of breathing and pumping the air, oxygen around. So anyway, your stove. Your stove is a straight up cigarette smoker. So, and it's also one of the cheapest ones to do. Side by side, this is a great example because on the left-hand side, you can see that this is a furnace and an air conditioner, and you're going to replace this box in your house with a box that looks very similar, but it's just going to be the air conditioner that goes in reverse, which is a heat pump. So this is the heat pump. This is the air conditioner gas furnace. Here is the water heater. These 2 things, I've shown you sort of the products that replace them. You put a heat pump water heater in this spot, and then you'll put a box that looks just like that. That'll just be the air conditioner heat pump box. Yeah, so this is what you might use. This is the A.O. Smith one. It's extra quiet, the 120 volt heat pump water heater. I like these ones. I also like the Reams, just like, but it's very quiet. For that same house, this is what's going to go outside. You can see the air conditioner. I showed you how inside, I'll just go back to this. Inside, as I understand it, am I correct here, Tom? Is it the bottom here that is the air conditioner? So it looks to me like...
Right, you can see the insulated Freon tube going down to the bottom. That's where the coil is in that furnace. It's an upflow furnace.
Right, so this is the air conditioner chunk, right? And this is the middle part, is the gas burning part.
Right.
Right, and got some controls there, computery stuff. And then this is where the gas burnt, like all the pollution goes out, that spot there.
Right.
Okay, so you just stick that heat pump water heater in that same spot, call it a day. It's nice because this has louvered doors. And when you put a heat pump water heater in an existing closet, you'd like to have the doors have louvers on them so it can do air exchange and it can get the heat from the house. Okay, so outside, this is what the air conditioner looks like. And this is, you can get a box that looks just like this, that is a heat pump. However, I'm just going to point out that a lot of the popular heat pumps these days look like this. They're upright, and it's just because they take less space. Not an important difference. Like, is the fan this way or is the fan this way? You know, like, who cares what direction the fan goes? But they organize it this way. It's just a little bit more compact. Whatever. Fujitsu, Mitsubishi, Mr. Cool, LG, Carrier, Daikin, whole bunches of brands. You would put in that piece of cement there underneath that air conditioner, and you would run the refrigerant, maybe even using the same pipe if possible, but probably run a new refrigerant line and call it good. Now you got a heat pump. These are the different kinds of boxes that distribute heating and cooling. The left-hand side, this is the box that would be in that house. It would be like this upright, although you can also tilt it on its side, either way. And that has both that's for duct work. It's a big, powerful fan inside, so it can blow a bunch of heating and cooling. This is not as powerful of a fan. It's called low static. Static, that means basically a weak fan. So this can only blow like 4 to 6 feet very effectively, but that's sometimes all you want. So they make them like that. They're less expensive and they don't blow as hard. This one is medium powerful. And this is another one of these multi-position air handlers, essentially very similar to the one over here. And then this is the ones that sit on the wall that you see all over the world, because it's the least expensive thing to do, is just to put it on the wall. That's what I have in my house. And Mitsubishi here, the high 2, you see this little symbol here, H high 2? This says, oh, we've got a computer in this and it'll produce heat when it's cold outside. A cold climate heat pump. I'm trying to illustrate this point where you take 2 to 5 units of energy from the air and use 1 unit of electricity to operate the fan and the compressor inside. And that essentially collects 3 to 6 units total of energy in the water or in the air. Most of it is obviously coming from the air, and it's just using a fan and the process of boiling a refrigerant to collect the heat. Stoves, the question you were asking earlier, Lena. So this gas stove is equivalent to someone smoking about 2 packs of cigarettes a day in your house. That's what it means to cook on a gas stove for 20 to 45 minutes, because these are dirty, super dirty. They're dirtier than the exhaust from your car, and it's an equivalent amount of pollution to your car idling. So it's like, would you idle your car into your kitchen? Would you do that on purpose? Would you, I mean, do you understand the health consequences if you did that for your whole family? It's like, and that's the same amount of pollution that's coming off of this. Only it doesn't come with a catalytic converter, so it has even more nitrous oxides. It's even rougher on your lungs. And the only difference is that you can't smell this. All the pollution's there, you just can't smell it because of the nature of methane. But methane burns into the same benzenes and nitrous oxides and sulfur oxides and PM 2.5. And it's like, oh my God, this stuff is so bad for people. Okay, you can get rid of it. You can get as little as a 1,100 stove. I don't know if I have that illustrated, but Samsung and Frigidaire both have $1,100 stoves that are great. Well, the Samsung is great. I don't recommend the Frigidaire. Don't get the cheapest possible device unless you want to pay for that. But so let's say you spent like $1,100 on a Samsung plus $500 of wiring, up to say $2,000, even $3,000 if you want a nice stove. But if you want a fancy stove, they start at $6,000, like the ones that look like a 1950s antique stove, and they go up to $20,000. I mean, if you are a rich person, there is a fancy induction stove for you. I got to work for a woman who brought Madonna and the Beatles and not the Beatles, but Madonna into iTunes, and Metallica. That's what I was trying to say. Metallica and Madonna, brought into iTunes. She lived in the fanciest freaking house I can imagine in Malibu overlooking the ocean. And I told her about what induction stoves were out there. And she was so excited that Smeg had a stove for like $6,000. She's like, thanks, I didn't know. And what'd she tell me? You're gold, I think is what she said. You're gold. I was like, that's such a Southern California thing to say to me. What does that mean even? Now, if you don't have much money, or if you want to go fast, this is your other option. You don't have to rewire. These are 240-volt devices, the induction and electric resistance stoves. All these stoves that are big, you have to put a new wire in, a 240-volt wire. This is what I cook on, this 2-burner induction range, and I can plug it into any outlet in my kitchen. And then I have a second one, because this one is really fancy. Like I spent a couple $100 more on it. This is like $150, this 2-burner here, and it is like $250. And I can make really just like, I can control the temperature to the exact temperature. Like I want it at 140 Fahrenheit for making caramel or something. This is my oven. It's an extra large from Oster, and it can cook a whole turkey, like a 20 to 30 pound turkey. So for less than $500, I had 1 2-burner and I had 1 oven, and then like bumped me up to $600 when I got the second fancier induction cooktop. And that's how I've been cooking since 2016 for my 3 kids spouse, etc., friends, and things like that. 3 burners and a nice oven. And I've bought one of these woks, but I don't know how to cook on a wok, so I gave it to somebody who does. And my point here is that induction has to go partnered with something that a magnet will stick to, some sort of ferrous metal. So stainless steel, cast iron, lots and lots of pans that are aluminum also have a little sheet of steel built into them, so they work with induction, because induction is the thing in Europe, not so much in the United States yet. So then this is fun. This is my daughter when she was 6 years old, the one that came in a few minutes ago. Now she's 9. And she was tripping on this because it looks like fire, but it's not. This is a mist fireplace. So as you're electrifying your home and you're getting rid of the gas fireplace, this can go anywhere. Like you can put it on your table as it was here. This is my little tiny Christmas tree up on the table. And then I would just turn on the fireplace all December long and just to have it on the table. And it looks just like fire. Here are barbecues. Texas, after all, famous for its barbecue. Weber is what most people think is just the best of the electric barbecues, but George Foreman has got a good reputation, and Kenyon. And if you like to boat, you'll find that generally you can't have open flames on boats, because if there's a fire, where are you going to go? So electric barbecues have been developed a lot for the boating culture. You find tons and tons of electric barbecues out there for boating, but as well just for, like, you know, apartments, patios. In most California cities, you're not even allowed to have a barbecue anymore, no matter what, unless it's electric, because it is the amount of pollution that comes off of burning stuff is too much for California cities these days. And I just want to show there's options. Look, 500 watt, not 500, it's the Pro 500. This is the small one that I had, but they also make bigger ones, you know, and ones that go into bars or into fancy homes, and you can put cassettes of them together, so you have like an entire firewall, and you can change the colors. So if you want, you can make it like Hogwarts, where it's rainbow or green and black or whatever. You can change the colors of the flames if you want, or just make it just flames. I'm almost done. I realize I've talked for a few minutes, so just want to show you. Only a few more slides left. If you have a 3,000 square foot house, or just a big old house, I'm going to show you a couple of things here to close this out. This is your circuit breaker panel done as a cartoon drawing, and everything that's blue are things that are just normal, we didn't change at all. But in green, what we're doing here are choices that we made so we didn't have to upsize the service for the house, the electrical wire. Even though this is a big house, 3,000 square feet, we're going to run it on an old-fashioned 100 amp service. Since 1962, every house has gotten a 100 amp service. So when I say old-fashioned, I mean like the one that everyone's had forever. People often go to 200 amps when they're electrifying because their electrician wants to make more money or just doesn't know better. But here you can see we have a plug strip. I'll show you in a moment, but I just call them plug strips. And this balances your dryer and your heat pump water heater. So now you can plug both of them into the same 240 volt outlet. The same thing here with your stove and your EV charger. I've got this little plug strip symbol here, and I'll show you like you can plug both of those into the same outlet, and it's less rewiring, and it doesn't trigger you having to get a service upgrade. On the left-hand side, ductless heat pumps. Ductwork has friction. Friction takes more energy to push the air through. And so if you want to not have to put in more electrical wiring to your house, one strategy is to go with a ductless heat pump. And you put those wall-mounted fan coils I showed you, you put them on different walls in the house, and it uses 1/3 less electricity. I mean, it's a lot of extra energy pushing air through ductwork, which is also very, leaky. The last one is that this is a solar array that is just being, this is about a 4 kilowatt solar array up on the roof. And that, in most circumstances, is what can easily fit onto 100 amps. There are a couple other strategies that go further, and I'll show you in a second. So this is the reason I'm showing you this is that I'm trying to say you don't need to get a service upgrade. Doesn't matter how big your house is. There's tons of strategies. And the booklet on our first slide, that pocket guide to all electric home retrofits, that has like 10 pages explaining what I'm doing kind of quickly here. These are the plug strips. This is what they look like. There's a lot of different products out there. The one on the left-hand side, this little black box, this would be an example of where you can see it's got an EV charger. That's this white thing on the wall, an EV charger. And then this coil is sitting on an electric resistance dryer. Both those things are plugged into one black box, which itself, the plug strip, is plugged into one outlet, a 240-volt outlet. And each of these devices, like the Dryer Buddy, which is designed for an EV charger and electric resistance dryer, or a Simple Switch, which works for all sorts of things. These are all designed so that you can not go over 100 amps. Just keep the power supply to your house that you have now and use the existing plugs, but share them in ways that don't trigger more power demand. This would be an example of a different approach to that. These are 120-volt dryers, as opposed to having, like, this is for plugging in a 240-volt, 30-amp dryer. Very powerful. These are, well, actually, to complete the math, an electric resistance dryer uses 7,200 watts total. That's what 30 times 240 is 7,200 watts. So these are using in the range of 1,200 to 1,400 watts. And that's why they don't trigger a new service to your house. They're all also 120 volts, so you can plug them into any outlets. So it's kind of a twofer. It's easy and it doesn't require much power. On the left-hand side, this is a heat pump dryer. In the middle, this is electric resistance. It'll just take a lot longer. And on the right-hand side, this is a condensing washer dryer. All three of these will take 2 to 3.5 hours to dry your laundry. The heat pump taking the least amount. And they're using the same amount of power. The heat pump is the best at getting the energy used. The electric resistance is the worst, and condensing is kind of in the middle. Although I didn't put it in the middle. Anyway, so these are all strategies. This is not a plug strip, but it's a whole panel that you can plug up to 400 amps of stuff into it, even though it only shows 100 amps to the world. And you can plug tons of things into it, and it'll do power balancing in case you're going over 100 amps, which is almost impossible to do for most people. Like 1% or less of households go past 100 amps ever in a whole year. I mentioned before how solar 4 kilowatts is the limit, unless you do something like this. This is what's called a meter collar, and a meter collar goes behind this meter, and this little bracket here is what they call the collar, and you can plug 15 kW of solar into it, or a super fast EV charger, because you're plugging into the main power supply to the house, not into the circuit breaker panel, which has all these little tiny circuits that just do a little bit of power. This is the main power supply to the house. So instead of 4 kilowatts, you can put 15 of solar on your roof, and you have to connect it in here. So that's a nice little trick. This also will let you plug in a fast EV charger. So pretty much the fastest thing you could possibly buy, you could plug into your meter with this meter collar, the connector, and you wouldn't have to even mess with your panel or having any service upgrades, yada, yada. Very simple technology. Okay, that is the conclusion of my presentation. I realized that was a bunch, and so I'd be more than happy to take questions, go backwards, and like, you know, if you were wondering, what was that? I totally missed that. Can you explain that again? I'm here for that. So is Tom, the hero of the day, who's got like 21 messages you've been working through. Good job, Tom. So if you want to take yourself off mute, or if you want to raise your hand and someone else can call on you, or whatever you want to do.
Thank you, Sean. That is a wonderful presentation and so much information that is hard to absorb.
I know, that's why there's a book. I'm going to show you where the booklet is, and I'll put it into the chat. Okay,
Yeah.
I know this is too much to absorb. You're a normal human.
Yeah, and Tom is the one from Texas. So Tom, if you can open your screen and introduce yourself, and maybe you can tell us that what are the sources or who are the people that we can reach out to, because we don't have contractors and I think that they know much.
Oh,
Okay, well, I'm from Texas, but that's just because I was born there at the Brooke Army Hospital.
Oh, okay.
Now I live in Menlo Park, California, and I've forgotten all my Texan.
Okay.
But luckily one of the audience members did put in a contractor recommendation, someone he found useful. And the basic strategy I had also written into the chat is look for the firms that are good at air conditioning. They're going to understand heat pumps, because a heat pump is just an air conditioner with a reversing valve in it and a little bit better controls. So it's able to pump the refrigerant in the opposite direction in the winter to bring in that outdoor heat. Because that outdoor air that feels so cold to us still has a lot of heat in it. And so the refrigerant gets down to -30 Fahrenheit, and it's able to grab heat out of that 0 Fahrenheit air and still keep heating our houses in winter.
Thank you.
And so I want to emphasize that what Tom said is like, get a good air conditioner installer, because that is a heat pump. They will know how to do heat pumps better than anyone else, is the AC contractors. Bob, I see you have your hand raised. You want to ask your question?
Yes, in making presentations about tax credits and rebates, I have had a number of people in Austin, Texas, say that when they went to try to get a heat pump, they said it required a complete rewiring of the home and upgrading from the 100 to the 400. And
Yeah.
and they seem completely.
That's total bullshit. That's totally wrong. It's not at all true. Don't listen to these nonsense talkers. Yeah. That's why we have this booklet here. So I'm gonna make sure, like, I put in the chat, I put the whole tab if you want to like read how to do commercial buildings and how to do apartments. But this one that I'm showing you here is just for houses and how to do your house.
And also I put the link to the Watt Diet calculator in there, where you can calculate the electric needs you have for ampacity. But it's like going to a barber and asking if you need a haircut. And of course the answer is yes. So we need to help people get familiar with their electric panel and with the ability to meet their needs with these efficient, right-sized, low-power devices, and skip getting advice from the electrician.
If you want to take some time.
To me that, I mean, one of the people lost the sale. Someone was ready to go with a heat pump, but not ready to go with a $15,000 rewiring of the home.
Yeah.
And why would they do that? They lose a sale that way.
Well, I think it's partly lack of knowledge, like ignorance, because they are thinking about technologies that were phased out in the last 10 years. Like in 2009 is the first time we got computers in the United States into our air conditioner heat pumps. Before that, you would have to put in 7,200 watts, 10,000 watts of backup power because they didn't work below freezing. Now you don't. Now it's just, you just run the heat pump. And they don't know that, perhaps. We see this in California too, where people get pushed into 400 amp panels. It's just ridiculous because you don't need more than 100. None of you needs more than 100. If you wanted to keep on 100 amps your existing service, there's like 5 to 10 different ways. And to that matter, in this booklet on page 19, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different summaries of how you could do it. That give you instructions, and it's in like a solid 10 pages of just like trying to explain to people how you could, what are all your different options. Tom made this graphic here of how, if you were space heating, how you could avoid using the National Electrical Code, different options that use different amounts of power. So it's more than I should explain in a presentation, but it's right here, and we designed it to be read by normal human beings as best we could. So
we should have the customer hand your booklet to the electrician guy and say, I'm not an upgrade. Right. If you can't do it, I'll talk to another company.
Yeah. Right. That's what we recommend doing, Bob, is pretty much looking at the booklet and using that watt diet calculator, make your own electrification plan where you're allocating, I'm going to want a 20 amp circuit for my 3-ton heat pump because I don't want to oversize my heat pump, and I want to pick an efficient one that can run on a 20 amp circuit, and it doesn't need backup strip heaters in the air handler because it's inverter driven. It's going to adjust its speed to keep putting out the comfortable air. Anyway, so we do that. And then, like I was mentioning in the chat, a 20 amp car charger circuit is enough for 39,000 miles a year. And that's all the home charging I want because I drive a quarter of that. And, just various right sizing decisions. If you really want to stay on your panel, you can do it. It's just a matter of making the right decisions. And then you hand the plan to the contractor and say, yeah, it's all allocated here. That's the space you get. Please do your job.
These products here, I just want to point out, these are like the standard heat pumps that people, because they look just like the air conditioner that you have now, the box types. And if you're looking at this booklet, you see in blue, it says -10, -5, -10, -4. That is telling you that this is a heat pump that has an inverter in it that can go to these really cold temperatures without electric resistance backup, without a 400 amp service or any kind of lunacy like that. This is the ones that are like the first thing in the booklet when you get to the HVAC section. It's like these 4 manufacturers, these 4 products. I want one of these, and then you won't have to deal with the nonsense of the service upgrade.
Let me mention another barrier to electrifying that I ran into. This is my own heat pump. For better or worse, I bought a 110 volt heat pump from Amazon, and I got it here. Then I started calling air conditioning companies in Austin, and every single one said, we do not install heat pumps unless we sell it to you, and we start at $6,500 installed. Now, I finally found on Angie Service someone to install it, and they had to charge $2,000 for the electric wiring and the installation and the bleeding of the refrigerant, which I assume was a good price. But what are your remarks about running into that problem?
Yeah, let me show you what pricing is. Actually, in the booklet, trying to help people get a sense of what things cost. Here we have, you said you got a 110 volt ductless mini split.
Yeah.
Right? So that is a 1 ton, 12,000 BTUs. It'll be either 9 to 12,000 BTUs. And that's what this is, 9 to 12. That's 9,000, 12,000 kBTUs. So this company, the heat pump store in Oregon, they gave me their pricing. They said, this is our standard pricing. And this is in 2020. So it's a little bit before COVID. $4,500, $4,750, $5,300. And these are all just one head on the wall, one fan coil on the wall, one thing outside. One, right? That's what you had?
That's what I got.
So they would be pricing this, and they have like 50 staff. They'd be pricing it in the range of $4,500 to $5,500. And you got a price for $6,500, which is on the higher side, but this is post-COVID. Is that $6,500 include your purchase of the heat pump, or is that in addition? Okay.
And
so
guarantee if anything goes wrong, come fix it.
Yeah, I think that you could get about $1,000 less than that with multiple bids, but it's not a terrible price.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you, just to expand here, you can see that 18,000 BTUs, 24,000. So most houses use 24,000 to 42,000 BTUs. So in this range is where most houses are. So you can see for a ductless mini split, it's like 5830 if it's one head on the wall. But look, if you have 3 fan coils on the wall, then their price goes up to $8,580 because there's more labor for installing refrigerant lines and installing them on the walls. 4 zones, 5 zones. And this is still generally less expensive than installing it in ductwork. This is kind of like the least expensive way to install heat pumps is these fan coils.
And if there's no need to upgrade the electrical service, you can get, the low-income people could have 100%, I think, of that paid, just about.
Yeah.
For a
Yeah.
3-zone heat pump.
If you were to like get the $8,000 rebate if you were low income, yeah, exactly. You could pretty much pay for the entirety of the cost. Now I see Stuart Birnbaum has a question. Can I grab that question?
First, the low income issue, you have to have $8,000 to be able to spend it. And
Yeah.
that's one of the problems. There really needs to be grants so that means tested grants so low income people could take advantage. That's
Let me
one of the
speak to that.
shortfalls.
So the way that the money is coming out, the rebates that are specifically for low income households is exactly as you're suggesting. They're going to do it where the money goes to direct install programs, which means that the nonprofit buys all the stuff, installs all the stuff, and gets paid. They get paid, and so you don't have to be low income and front the money. So yes, direct installation programs are, for better or worse, because I wish that there was other ways of distributing the money, et cetera. But yes, that is a good thing they're doing, is making so low income folks don't have to pay for it up front.
So my question was actually about bi-directional charging for an EV.
Oh, good. I love that topic.
And where are we with that? And is that covered by the IRA?
The EV charger is covered. 1 second here. I'm just going to bring up cancel. Okay, so bidirectional charging. In the United States, there's only Nissan that is offering their warranty so that you can plug your car into the grid. And there's only one manufacturer that makes a car charger that Nissan Leaf accepts with their warranty. That's Fermata and the FE15. And I'll show you that in just a second here. So the FE15, -15 Fermata. Okay, and go back to Zoom, share my screen there. Okay, this is what it looks like. This is something that you could get a Nissan Leaf, and Nissan Leafs are so inexpensive if they're used right now. And so you can get the craziest, cheapest battery. You can get like a 20 kilowatt hour battery for $3,000 or $4,000. Whereas if you buy that much as a Tesla Powerwall, that would be like, oh my God. It would be in the range of like $25,000 to $30,000. So it is like 1/10 as expensive to go out and get a Nissan Leaf.
Buy a rolling battery that can drive.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what I went through. It so happens we bought a Leaf in 2018, and I know from research that it will work.
And it'll work with this one. We got paid. We're part of a grant. There's $1 million that was awarded to a team of us to try to figure out how to do the most energy self-sustaining apartment complex. And so for months, my staff and I have been researching how to do vehicle to grid today, in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So that solution I just told you is the only solution today, is the Nissan Leaf with the Fermata FE15. However, now the F-150 Lightning that you're probably familiar with, right?
Yep.
Okay, the F-150 Lightning does not charge the grid. It has to be off-grid. So let's see if I can find a cute little picture of the FE15. There's a bunch of them.
Theirs is vehicle to load.
Yeah. Well, it's vehicle to, the way that I would distinguish it, the way the engineers tell me to distinguish it, is there's grid forming. I make a grid myself for this house. It is not connected to anything else. It is grid forming. And then there's grid following. There's a grid out there. I'm plugging a car into it. I have to match its Hertz cycle. I have to pay attention to its voltage. If I throw electricity in that's conflicting with its Hertz cycle, it'll turn into garbage in the grid and people will get upset. So grid forming the Ford Lightning right now will make its own grid and will charge your house off grid, but you can't plug it into the grid and do any like grid tied work. Whereas you can with that FE15 and the Nissan Leaf this year today. A third one that is coming out, the one has been installed to my knowledge on a project that I was working on in Oakland. So it's out of Canada though. So this device here that you can see, this big box, this can do multiple cars. So it's hose, you know, the vehicle charging hose, and the thing that clips in. They say they will, whether or not cars are warranted to use it is different. But they're saying that they will accept any kind of car, basically, that's a warranty to plug into it. And this will then, it's your solar inverter, it's your battery controller, it's your vehicle to grid controller, and it does a whole bunch of that work. And it's kind of an all-in-one package that's just coming out of Canada, the Decibel. And to be honest, I don't know if it's grid forming or grid following. I suspect that it's grid forming, meaning it's for off-grid, not for on-grid. I think that's how this one works. So really the FE15 is what we do for plugging into the grid.
Right.
And I think the tax credits are available for circuit work associated with that, but I don't know that there's any special credit for bidirectionality.
Yeah, in California, some of our utilities have started to subsidize or rebate bidirectionality, even though there's no products really for sale. But they're just trying to make everyone aware of the fact that they're coming out, like, because essentially all vehicle manufacturers who are making EVs announced this year their date for bidirectionality being 2025 or 2026 for all of the EVs. And that's like BMW and Audi and Volkswagen and like Chevy and all of them, except Tesla. Tesla is the only one who's still trying to sell their home batteries. They don't want to sell batteries on wheels that cost half as much.
Right.
They want to sell their very expensive home batteries. So Tesla is the only clinker in the bunch. Bob, you have your hand up. Did you want to ask a different question than bidirectionality?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Well, maybe Shirish. Can I ask Shirish questions first? Because
No, it's okay, Bob. It's me.
Okay.
It's my husband's name. No, go ahead, Bob. Then I will ask you.
Do you recommend that people install along with their solar battery backup?
I don't. I think that right now having a standalone battery is the most expensive way to buy a battery. And I think that it'd be better to go buy a used Nissan Leaf for about 1/3 the expense per kilowatt hour, and then get one of these FE15s or the Decibel. That would give you 2 or 3 times as much battery for less than half the cost. I mean, just so much better of a deal that would be, I think that'd be the way to go. I think that the moment in time in which people bought home batteries, which has never been that popular, there's 80 times as much battery on wheels in the United States as there is on people's houses. 80 times as much. And there's also 3 times as much battery on wheels as there is connected to the grid for like big utility scale batteries. So the world's market is car batteries. That is what is really driving all battery manufacturing in the world. And that's where you get the cheapest prices.
Thank you.
You bet.
So yeah, so my question, Sean, is I have brand new house, and I see all this attractive and things that I want to do, but I mean, do you think it's worth it right now?
Is it worth it to what?
To do all these changes, it's like everything is new, and more except the gas, which I'm not happy. Everything is electric, so
Yeah. Well, is your stove gas?
yeah, stove is the one that is gas that I want to
Yeah. That's
convert.
the one where, the first study that came out was in 1995, and every couple of years they've come out with another study saying the same thing. But this 1995 study really stuck in my head, because back in the 90s, there were still people who smoked cigarettes at home in the house, right? So they had a big data set, like 350 households that had smokers in the house, cigarette smokers, and they had an equal number of households that didn't. And they had them in electric stoves or gas stoves. And they found that people with electric stoves didn't have the health issues that people who had cigarette smokers or gas stoves. Gas stoves had the same health impact as someone smoking cigarettes in the house. And it's just because it's so much. You don't, when you turn on a gas stove, it's hard for you to understand. Think of it, I'm trying to like, how can I explain this? Like a cigarette is 20 matches worth of energy, roughly 20 matches, and you're burning in the range of like 6,000 matches when you have that thing cranked over the course of an hour. That's 6,000 matches that you just burnt.
Yeah.
That's a lot of smoke. When you burn that much stuff, it makes so much smoke.
Mhm.
So it is that'd be the thing I'd go after. It's just like get rid of your gas stove immediately. Particularly for any of you guys, like I'm 47, but I know that my lung capacity is going to be reduced every decade of my life until I become as old as my 102-year-old grandma. That's amazing. But it's like I would like to save my lungs for running after my grandchildren as opposed to wasting it on my gas stove.
Yeah, so induction stove, but for weatherization, should I change my windows or, because it's
No,
brand new,
I don't
because
think you need to don't change your windows. None of that will be cost effective. It would be much better money spent if you got a better heat pump when you get your 3 bids and you say, I'd like to have a cold climate heat pump. I'd like to have a Mitsubishi, please, or a Carrier. And then you get your bids and you say, I want the more efficient one. Give me the most efficient one, please. And they'll like go back to their catalog and they'll give you the most efficient. That'd be a better place to spend money than on your windows or not on your new house.
yeah.
Now, Tom, do you disagree?
Nope, same. That's the same advice I end up giving too, and it's especially appropriate when your house is new and meeting the new energy codes. It's all already insulated and everything. So, yeah, one thing we need to do in looking at the climate problem is we need to quit putting prerequisites in front of each other about you. First, you have to do this before you get to do that. Wherever you're ready to start, we need to start.
Yeah.
And we just need to get going now. We've used up all the lagging time.
Yeah.
Thank
No more
you.
excuses. I mean, right now we have to get rid of the fossil fuels. Even if it's not efficient, we have to get rid of the fossil fuels.
And so the thing Sean and I are talking about is how do you electrify simply without having to upsize everything? And so, oh yeah, that'll help us get started and we can get going and demonstrate things for the neighbors and everyone gets comfortable.
So do you have a list of contractors or electrician or anything in this area, San Antonio, or I mean, no, right?
I don't, but
Any-
hopefully your organizations, maybe you could start a group. We have Nextdoor. I don't know if you have Nextdoor, but we've started home electrifier groups on Nextdoor, and we kind of curate those groups. So I recommend one of you start one of those groups and curate it, meaning you let people in and they behave themselves, because we talk only about how to get the electrification done and who's using this contractor and that contractor, how they like it, what their story is. And they share that local information about it, but we don't want to just let the trolls in who just want to complain that we shouldn't do electrification.
Yeah, that will be the problem here. This is Texas, so.
Yeah, the trolls need to go to their troll sites and do troll things.
Texas, the land of trolls. I think, Stuart, you had this question about if I could explain again about how air conditioners and like why a heat pump would be better than a standard air conditioner.
That's David, but go ahead.
David, I apologize. Okay, so about 80 to 90% of air conditioners sold in the United States today don't have a computer in them. Don't know why, but because the computer makes them about 30 to 70% more energy efficient. I mean, dramatic decreases in energy use, much more heat much more cool, whatever, delivered for every unit of electricity, much more, as soon as you add a computer. Adding a computer to an air conditioner, which is the inverter, it's also the variable drive. There's like 5 different names given to the same stupid computer. It's just a little computer. So you stick a little computer in there, and not only does it make the air conditioning more efficient, it also makes it so that the heat pump knows how to move faster, compress more work when it's extra cold outside. It makes it a variable speed. So instead of just having the fan go at one speed and the compressor at that same speed, they're just working together, doing their work. The computer can ramp it up, go faster. Oh, it's not much of a demand. Go slower, use less energy right now. And you get, so what it does is allows it to produce heat at like -20 or -30 Fahrenheit. So there's no temperature you can't produce heat at once you have to get the computer in there. And it also like uses 30 to 70% less energy for air conditioning. And it's really just the magic of a very smart little computer in there doing controls and speeding and slowing things up to be responsive to the actual needs of the moment, as opposed to, you know, treating everything like it's a flat. Like, I like to think of bicycles like, you know, wintertime is like the Tour de France. It's like it gets cold at night, it's warm during the day. And heat pumps are built like, you know, the flat plains of Texas, like you're just gonna, you know, bicycle on a flat surface for 20 miles. So adding the computer in is what lets you turn it into like a Tour de France bicycle. Someone, I think Tom, no, the last question I'm going to take. Bob, you've been recommending people go to rewiringamerica.org. I think that's a great resource. You'll find on rewiring.org our booklet. They recommend people to that single family retrofit booklet that I put out there. They've written their own, which I helped them write, but it doesn't have as good of illustrations and case studies. So I still recommend mine, and they recommend it also.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I have a girlfriend who's like, hey, are you gonna come over? So if it's okay, it's 5 o'clock and I'm gonna go take my Saturday evening now.
So, yeah.
And I would just say that Tom, I'm gonna put my email address into the chat, SeanArmstrongPM@gmail.com. And I would happily help you out for up to 30 minutes, maybe an hour. I can set up a meeting with you. I would love to review bids. If someone sends you a bid and you can be like, does this make sense for my HVAC? It says $18,000. Can you tell me if that's a good price? Send that to me. I collect bids. I can tell you what it means. So can Tom. Like, use us as your free environmental volunteers who are specialists in heat pumps. Don't have problems and think like no one is out here to help me. Sean and Tom are just here to help you. Just ask and we'll help you out.
Thank you. That is a big thing.
Absolutely.
John, one last thing. You did share the link for the booklet. Is
Yes.
that the link? Like we click on the link and the booklet should open, or how does that work?
Yes, the booklet should open. So if you try clicking on it, you can tell me what you see.
It
Uh,
opens for me.
Yep. So the one that has like a long, I hit it. Yeah, a pocket guide to all electric single retrofits, and then that's there.
Okay. All right.
And then
Other thing that I think Tom was posting on the chat, something Redwood Energy. What is that?
that's my company.
Okay.
Yeah, and on my website, you'll find we have a lot of free booklets. An organization in Menlo Park that Tom is a volunteer board member with. They paid us to write these booklets. That's why they're free. And they were used by all those cities that were banning gas, particularly in Silicon Valley. So many cities banned gas right away. So the booklets were used to try to help city council members and homeowners and such figure out if they could do it. So they're written to be used by normal people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Sean, can we? I think New Jersey show or somewhere you said that. Somebody said that for you can offer your house for case study, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, if you guys next time, but once a month we have the Ask Sean show, which really is like the Ask Sean and Tom show. And if you would like to reach out to us, I gave you my email address. I'll study your house. Tom and I will, and like give you specific recommendations if you're just willing to submit to having your photos talked about, and But yeah, if you guys want to have like personal attention, we can study your house and share it with other people as like an example.
Yeah, that's a great, great thing to do. Because I would love to, even though my house is new, I would love to, do the case study. How can I?
Well, I have someone calling, so I have to go. It's the end of the day. I have someone
So thank
telephoning.
you so
also.
much again.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. And Tom, take care, y'all.